The first patient was a brother in Boston named Michael White. I said, well, I must send him the compound. I removed from the man's diet lactose, uric acid, and carbonic acid, milk, starches, and meat. By removing these things from his diet and then cleansing his cells, he began to see recovery in 24 hours.
What if I told you the food you eat every day is packed with chemicals linked to cancer, heart disease, and more? The FDA knows this well, but still has looked the other way. For years, preservatives like BHA and BHT, banned in other countries, have quietly stayed on our shelves, poisoning millions without us even knowing. That's why, in this video, we're diving deep with Dr. Sebi to uncover the dark truth behind these additives, how they end up in our meals, why they're still allowed, and what this means for our health. Stick around. This might just change the way you think about every meal. So, BHA and BHT are preservatives you'll find in a variety of food and beauty products. Both BHA and BHT are antioxidants, which is a fancy way of saying they help keep the fats in processed foods from spoiling, like cereals, potato chips, and oils. They help foods stay fresh by keeping them from turning rancid or changing color and taste. But they don't take care of our health that way. Rather, they mess with the brain, behavior, and may even cause cancer because they turn into harmful, cancer-causing compounds in your body. Definitely something to think about next time you're reaching for that snack. Not only that, but BHA and BHT are also often used in products like baby shampoo, lotions, and even snacks to keep them fresh. But the problem is, they're linked to health risks like cancer, birth defects, hormone disruption, and even learning problems. These chemicals can mess with a cell's DNA, which is why they may lead to cancer. BHA is actually labeled by the National Toxicology Program as something that's reasonably anticipated to be a carcinogen based on animal studies, while BHT's link to cancer is a bit more up in the air. It's kind of mixed. Despite the warnings, the FDA still lets them slide in products. While the FDA says they're fine in small amounts, too much or long-term effects could mess with your hormones or cause reproductive issues. Now, imagine what happens when you use BHA and BHT-packed lotion and snack since someone's childhood. For that reason, these are both flagged by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC. Studies have shown that in high amounts, they can actually cause tumors in animals. For example, BHA has been found to cause liver tumors in mice and tumors in the forestomach of rats, especially when they're exposed to other carcinogens at the same time. They're supposed to help by stopping free radicals and reactive oxygen species, ROS, from causing damage to our cells. But when we take too much of them, especially over a long period, things start to go sideways. Our liver steps in to break them down, using some enzymes, and this process creates some pretty reactive byproducts. These byproducts can stick to our DNA, which might cause mutations, and this is how cancer can get its foot in the door. But it doesn't stop there. Instead of doing their job and reducing oxidative stress, BHA and BHT can actually make it worse. These byproducts pump out more ROS, which go on to mess with our lipids, proteins, and DNA.
Every disease begins right here. I mean right here. I don't care if you're blind or if you're insane. It's right here. That acid state influences the brain and the central nervous system. It changes the image in your eyes. You do not see with your eyes. Your eyes is only the lens that the brain looks through. What the brain sees is what you're going to see.
All this damage fires up inflammation, which pushes abnormal cells to grow. Over time, these messed up cells can pile up mutations and turn into tumors. On top of that, BHA and BHT can also ruin important cell processes, like growth and cell death, apoptosis. As a result, in the European Union, they've banned BHA from being used in cosmetics as a fragrance. And in California, if a product has BHA, it has to come with a cancer warning label. Back in 1990, Dr. Glenn Scott took a stand and asked the FDA to ban BHA because of its toxic effects. But even though there was evidence backing him up, the FDA didn't do anything about it. What's crazy is that the FDA has just ignored the petition. They've missed their deadline over 60 times, 64 to be exact. Because of this, BHA is still in over 4,600 products, including big-name brands. The FDA hasn't banned BHA or BHT because studies show they are safe in the small amounts used in food. Since the tiny amounts in food aren't seen as risky, the FDA and other food safety agencies regularly check new research and still consider BHA and BHT safe in the allowed amounts. While many companies use them, some choose not to because shoppers prefer simpler, more natural ingredients. Since 2000, almost 99% of chemicals have been given the green light by the industry itself, not the FDA. And when the FDA does evaluate substances, it's usually only when new dangers come to light, like with red dye number 3. It was banned in 1990 after being linked to cancer, but somehow it's still in food today. Why? Let me tell you a story. Back in the 60s and 70s, public health folks were making real progress in getting people to quit smoking. But then, around the mid-80s, Big Tobacco fought back hard. They pushed for laws that stopped local governments from passing their own health regulations, a move known as state preemption. Between 1986 and 1991, tobacco companies got 7 of these laws passed, and then another 17 in the next 5 years. These laws blocked things like raising tobacco taxes, creating smoke-free spaces, restricting tobacco sales to kids, and regulating how tobacco is sold. A study in 2020 found that it took an average of 11 years to undo these laws, and a lot of them were still in place as late as 2019. These moves hit low-income and minority communities the hardest, especially Black Americans, who faced higher rates of smoking-related deaths and second-hand smoke exposure. Now, Big Tobacco's playbook is being used by other industries, like food and beverage companies, who are using BHA and BHT by lobbying, throwing money into campaigns, threatening lawsuits, and using preemption laws. These preservatives help food last longer on the shelf and make the industry more money, but they often pressure regulators to ease up on rules to protect their profits. In the end, consumer safety often takes a back seat to making money. Dr. Sebi, a renowned herbalist from Honduras, who was really passionate about the idea that what we eat plays a huge role in our health, has been vocal about it. He never liked the idea of eating processed food. He believed that the body is naturally in balance and that illnesses pop up when we mess with that balance by putting unnatural stuff into our system, like all the chemicals and additives we find in modern food.
My parting word would be this: make sure that whenever you put something in your mouth, that something is going to complement you and that it's going to serve you well. It's going to support your nervous system. Because if you don't, you will find yourself stressed. Not only are you going to find reasons to dislike me, you're going to dislike yourself.
One of the big things Dr. Sebi was always talking about was how bad synthetic preservatives are for our bodies. Things like BHT and BHA, which are used in processed foods to keep them fresh longer, are totally unnatural and, according to him, mess with the body's natural processes. These chemicals, he argued, can even lead to chronic diseases like cancer and nerve problems. Instead of those chemicals, Dr. Sebi suggested we stick to more natural ways to preserve food like organic, raw, and plant-based options. He was all about the healing power of whole foods like fruits, veggies, and herbs. He also swore by eating alkaline foods, the kind that help detox and bring your body back into balance. But Dr. Sebi wasn't just about what you eat. He pushed for a whole lifestyle shift, including herbal remedies, detoxing regularly, and making changes to how you live to help your body heal itself. He really believed that nature gives us everything we need to stay healthy, and cutting out all those artificial chemicals, especially preservatives like BHT and BHA, was key to avoiding sickness and feeling your best.
I was 291 pounds. Now, I only weigh 120. That's all I weigh, 120 pounds. And trust me, I haven't felt this good in my whole entire life.
And not only him, because of their toxicity, countries in Europe, the UK, and Japan have also banned them. But here's where it gets interesting. The European Union actually bans a lot of food additives that are still allowed in the US, especially those tied to cancer risks. For example, substances like potassium bromate and azodicarbonamide are found in baked goods, and BHA and BHT pop up in processed foods. Europe has put restrictions on these chemicals because of their potential health risks, like cancer, but they're still used in the US. The FDA doesn't regulate some of these additives because they were approved before the 1958 Delaney Amendment, which is supposed to keep cancer-causing additives out. The US has not banned BHA and BHT, unlike the EU and Japan, due to differing regulatory approaches, scientific interpretations, and industry factors. As stated before, the FDA considers BHA and BHT generally recognized as safe, GRAS, viewing current data as insufficient to warrant a ban at regulated levels. So, while we're over here consuming foods with all these additives, there's a real debate about whether they might be causing health issues like cancer or memory loss. Europe is more cautious, and it makes you wonder why the US is still trying to walk the line when they know the long-term effects of BHA and BHT. BHA is generally approved for use with limits set by food safety rules. The allowed daily intake is pretty low, about 0 to 0.5 milligrams for every kilogram of body weight. Now, BHA does have some upsides. It helps protect against aging and might even help prevent cancer. But, like most things, too much of it can mess with reproduction, cause birth defects, and mess with liver function. There's also a bit of a connection between hormones, like estrogen and testosterone, and antioxidants like BHA. For example, BHA might affect how these hormones work in the body. In some studies, BHA's been suspected of acting like estrogen. It has this thing where it can attach to estrogen receptors, which could mess with how cells grow. It also blocks androgens, like testosterone, from doing their thing in the prostate. That's not all. It boosts the liver's metabolism of estrogen and thyroid hormones too. Plus, it turns up certain enzymes that break these things down. But what's really concerning is that BHA doesn't just stay where it's put. It gets absorbed into fat and liver tissues, and it can even cross the placenta, potentially affecting babies in the womb. There have been mixed reports on how BHA affects reproduction. In pigs, for example, too much BHA led to smaller babies and bigger livers and thyroid glands. In rats, it caused growth delays and even led to some baby rats dying. So, the long-term effects, especially during pregnancy, are still pretty unclear. The big worry here is something called endocrine-disrupting chemicals, EDCs. These are chemicals that mess with the body's hormones and can cause all sorts of health issues. BHA is one of these EDCs, and it's found in a lot of products people use every day, including foods, cosmetics, and even in pharmaceuticals. EDCs can mess with hormone receptors, disrupt hormone transport, or interfere with how hormones are processed. Long-term exposure to these chemicals could lead to things like infertility, cancer, thyroid problems, and even diabetes. If you're exposed to them for a long time, they can hurt your liver, causing problems like fatty liver disease. Some studies have shown that even low doses of EDCs can mess with estrogen. So even if you're not getting much BHA, it could still be having an effect. And when different weak estrogen-like chemicals are mixed together, they can either add up or cancel each other out, depending on the dose. So the bottom line is that while BHA might be doing its job in keeping food fresh, it could also pose some major health risks, both for humans and animals. As a result, if you're not careful with what you eat, don't expect to see great fitness results. So, always check the labels on what you buy to make sure you're not getting stuck with stuff like BHA and BHT. Focus on eating real, whole foods, things like lean meats, veggies, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and seeds. You'll usually find these around the edges of the grocery store, away from all the processed junk in the middle.
Young man? I say, yes, sir. I heard that you've been experimenting with herbs. Said, yes. Well, I'm blind. I'm blind for 10, 11 years. Could you help me? I shall try. If you make me see, I give you $1 million. I gave the man the substance. When am I going to see? I said, about Friday. Now, why did I select Friday until this day? I don't know. But I was so sure of myself. But how could a boy that didn't go to school be so sure of himself? The man went home with the medicine. On the Wednesday, good morning, young man. I raised my right hand. He said, you raise your right hand. I winked my left eye. He said, you wink your left eye. I said, the man is seeing. At that point of my journey, I couldn't explain that. I know it's a bunch of herbs that cleanse the man's body, but they were all alkali plants.
Stay away from breakfast cereals, snack foods, baked goods, and even things like chewing gum and some cosmetics. But don't worry, more and more brands are making options that are free from these bad preservatives, so just look for labels that say preservative-free or no BHA, BHT. Instead of processed stuff, go for the fresh, unprocessed stuff. Fruits, veggies, grains, and nuts. They don't have all those artificial chemicals. Organic products are another good choice since they usually don't use those synthetic preservatives. The less processed food you eat, the less exposure you'll get to things like BHA and BHT, and making your meals from scratch gives you full control over what's going into your food. And don't forget to check the ingredients in your personal care products too. Things like lotions, moisturizers, and lip balms can have BHA and BHT in them. So, whether it's food or personal care stuff, just keep an eye on the labels to protect yourself from these preservatives and take care of your health. And at times, try to have cleansing and revitalizing your body.
An intracellular cleansing. Self-explanatory. Cleaning every cell that makes up every organ and system that totals the biological you. Meaning cleaning all of you.
You know, there's been a lot of talk lately about the stuff they put in our food, especially preservatives like BHA and BHT. So a lot of experts are sounding the alarm, asking for stricter rules and more transparency from the food industry. They want the FDA to step in and ban these preservatives to keep us safer. But here's the thing, it's not just about experts raising concerns. It's about us, the consumers, demanding change. We need to start pushing for safer food policies, holding both the food companies and regulators accountable for what they're putting on the shelves. We've got to make sure they care about our health as much as they care about their profits. If enough of us speak up, we can make a real difference. Because, as you just saw, the FDA has known for years about the dangers of BHA and BHT, yet they remain in our food. So, it's time we take control of what we consume before it's too late. So, don't you think BHA and BHT should be banned from our food? What should we do to get them banned as soon as possible? And how can we avoid them as long as they are not banned? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking health revelations. See you soon.